The theatre is dark before the curtain rises. A thin line of light crosses the stage floor. Shoes scrape softly against wood. A piano tests a bright little phrase. Beyond the curtain, the audience waits for the brother the world will one day remember. Fred Astaire, the man with the top hat, the cane, the impossible ease, the man who would glide across movie screens as if gravity had agreed to step aside. But before the cameras, before Ginger Rogers, before Hollywood learned how to photograph elegance, there was another name beside his. Adele Astaire. She was the laugh before the music began, the flash of mischief inside the polished routine. Fred had discipline, Fred had refinement. Fred had the hunger to perfect one gesture until it looked effortless. Adele had something harder to teach: presence. She could step onto a stage and make people lean forward before she had done anything at all. She could turn a glance into a punchline, a stumble into charm, a dance into a conversation. For years, the most important Astaire partnership was not Fred and Ginger. It was Fred and Adele. This is not a story about who danced better. It is a story about invisible influence, about a woman who helped build a legend, then walked away before the world understood what she had built. Adele was born in Omaha, Nebraska, in 1896, into a family still close enough to immigrant struggle to know that talent could become an escape route. The family name was Austerlitz then, but show business liked names that sounded lighter, cleaner, easier to print on a poster. So Austerlitz became Astaire, and a little girl with quick feet and quicker instincts became the center of a family hope. Imagine her in a rehearsal room in New York, small shoes on a polished floor, hair tied back, eyes bright with energy she cannot yet name. Adults speak around her in practical whispers. Lessons, costumes, bookings, money. Fred is there too, younger, watching from the side. Before Fred became the definition of style, he was the little brother pulled through the door Adele had opened. Her early success helped create the opportunity for the siblings' career together. Her early talent helped turn the family toward the stage. Leadership does not always arrive with a title. Sometimes it arrives as the first person brave enough to be seen. Their childhood became a road, not the glamorous road people imagine later, when old photographs turn everything soft. It was trunks, train smoke, cheap rooms, hurried meals, strange cities, applause that vanished as quickly as it came. Vaudeville did not raise children gently. It taught them timing before comfort. It taught them how to read a room before they could fully read the world. It taught them that an audience is not one thing but many: tired workers, restless mothers, bored critics, laughing soldiers, people looking to forget their lives for 10 minutes. Adele learned fast. She learned that a pause could be louder than a line. She learned that charm was not prettiness. Charm was control. It was the ability to make strangers feel included in your private joke. Fred learned differently. He practiced. He repeated. He refined. Where Adele trusted instinct, Fred built structure. Where she seemed to float, he measured. He wanted the step clean, the rhythm exact, the angle right. Their difference became the engine. Adele made the audience feel the number was happening for the first time. Fred made sure it could happen that way every night. That is partnership at its best. Not two people doing the same thing, but two people making each other more complete. On stage, they looked like a brother-sister act. Behind the curtain, they were a working system. Fred's technical excellence needed warmth around it. Without warmth, perfection can feel cold. Adele's charisma needed a frame. Without a frame, brilliance can scatter. Together, they built a language. He gave the act discipline. She gave it oxygen. He could turn a routine into architecture. She could turn that architecture into a party. When audiences laughed, it was often because Adele had invited them to laugh. When critics spoke about the magic of the Astaires, much of that magic came from the tension between his control and her unpredictability. But public memory rewards what it can measure. This has often shaped the way women's contributions enter history. Technical achievements are easier to archive than emotional intelligence, collaboration, or the ability to elevate others. Yet these invisible forms of leadership have changed institutions, partnerships, and cultures just as profoundly. It remembers the clean line, the exact step, the famous film. It struggles with atmosphere. It struggles with the person who changes the temperature in the room. Adele's influence was like stage lighting. When it worked, everyone looked better. When it disappeared, only then did people notice the shadows. That is the quiet danger of invisible leadership. It can be essential and still be underestimated. By the time Broadway began to notice them, Adele and Fred were no longer just trained children. They were survivors of the road. They knew how to enter confidently, even when exhausted. They knew how to recover from a missed cue without letting the audience smell fear. They knew every performance was a negotiation. Give the crowd delight, and the crowd gives you permission to continue. New York gave them a bigger stage. The lights were sharper, the audiences more fashionable, the stakes higher. A good night could change a career. A bad one could close a door for years. Adele did not shrink. She seemed to expand under attention. Some performers ask for admiration. Adele asked for complicity. She made the audience feel clever for enjoying her. She carried a quality that could not be pinned down. Part elegance, part comedy, part rebellion. Beside her, Fred sharpened. He watched everything. The timing of the orchestra, the sound of applause, the difference between a laugh earned by effort and a laugh released by surprise. Adele gave him a living lesson in ease. Fred, with the patience of a craftsman, learned how to make ease repeatable. Every great partnership has a central tension. In the Astaire partnership, it was charisma versus technical excellence. Adele was the kind of performer people remembered in feelings. Fred was the kind they remembered in movement. She could bend the form and make it lovable. He could perfect the form and make it immortal. Neither gift was superior. But history later favored one because film favored one. The camera loved Fred's lines. It could preserve his footwork. It could follow the geometry of his body across a room. His excellence translated beautifully into cinema. Adele's gift was more fragile. It lived in the shared air of a theatre. It lived in the reaction between performer and audience, in the spark that appears once and then vanishes. You had to be there. And because most people today were not, later generations were left with fewer ways to understand her power. This happens in leadership too. Some people create the system. Others become the symbol. Some shape the culture. Others receive the award. Some bring confidence into the room. Others deliver the final presentation. Adele's story asks a hard question. How many legends are built by people whose contributions were too human, too relational, too atmospheric to be recorded properly? Then came London. Not as a side note, but as a second arena. The Astaires crossed the Atlantic and entered rooms where art, aristocracy, money, and reputation all watched one another carefully. London's society had rules. Adele had a rare gift. She could enter a room with rules and make people enjoy forgetting them. She was not only performing on stage now, she was performing in drawing rooms, dinners, conversations, and introductions where influence moved quietly from one person to another. This is where her charisma became more than entertainment. It became currency. Fred could impress with skill. Adele could disarm with personality. She had the kind of social intelligence that made powerful people relax. And when powerful people relax, doors open. Invitations arrive. Networks form. The siblings became more than a successful act. They became names people wanted near them. Adele's leadership was not formal. She did not stand behind a desk declaring strategy, but she understood atmosphere. She understood access. She understood that reputation is not built only by what you do under lights. It is built by how people feel when they leave your presence. Modern leaders often call this soft power, but there was nothing soft about its results. It is tempting to imagine Adele and Fred as effortless, two halves of a perfect machine. No lasting partnership is effortless. It asks for compromise, patience, restraint, and sometimes the swallowing of private frustration so the public performance can remain seamless. Adele was older. She had been the first draw. She had the natural brilliance that can make rehearsal feel unnecessary. Fred was restless, exacting, anxious beneath his elegance. He needed repetition. He needed control. He needed to know the floor would hold. Picture a rehearsal room. Adele, playful and impatient, ready to trust the moment. Fred, focused and unsatisfied, returning to the same passage again and again, chasing a standard only he can see. A weaker partnership would have turned that difference into resentment. The Astaires turned it into rhythm. She loosened him. He steadied her. She taught him not to let precision become stiffness. He taught the act how to survive beyond impulse. This is one of the great lessons of collaboration. Chemistry is not sameness. Chemistry is difference held together by respect. Today, it sounds strange to say Fred Astaire stood in anyone's shadow, but the greatest surprise was still to come. The woman who had once outshone Fred would make a decision almost no one expected. But for years, he did. Not completely, not helplessly, but clearly enough that people around the act understood Adele's star power. That could have made him bitter. Instead, it seems to have made him sharper. He studied the gap between talent and effect. He learned that steps alone do not win an audience. He learned that a performer must make skill feel like pleasure. Adele, perhaps without intending to, gave him the missing ingredient. When he later moved through film with that famous calm, some of Adele's lesson was still there. The invitation, the lightness, the sense that the audience was not being shown perfection, but welcomed into it. That is invisible influence at its deepest, when someone's impact remains inside another person's success. Adele did not just share a stage with Fred. She helped shape the performer he became. By the early 1930s, Adele had spent almost her entire life performing. Childhood, adolescence, womanhood, all of it had been shaped by rehearsals, bookings, applause, and travel. The stage had given her identity, income, fame, access, and admiration. But it had also asked for everything. Then love entered the story, carrying a different promise. Lord Charles Cavendish belonged to a world far from vaudeville trunks and backstage corridors. Marriage to him offered Adele something she had rarely known, a life not measured by curtain times. To the public, it looked like a fairy tale exit. A brilliant American performer marrying into British aristocracy, the stage star becoming Lady Charles Cavendish, the girl from Omaha crossing into castles, titles, and old family portraits. But beneath the glamour was a more human decision. Adele was tired. Tired of the road, tired of repeating delight for strangers, tired, perhaps, of being understood only in relation to performance. So she did something that shocked the entertainment world. She left. At the height of a partnership that had defined both her life and Fred's, Adele Astaire walked away. Walking away is not always failure. Sometimes it is the most difficult form of self-knowledge. A woman deciding that success does not get to define her forever. There is another reason Adele's story matters. She understood that identity can become a room too small to live in. For most of her life, she had been Adele and Fred, not Adele alone, not even Adele first, despite being older and often more naturally magnetic. The world liked them paired. It understood them as a unit. But a partnership, no matter how successful, can become a mirror you cannot step away from. Adele stepped away, not perfectly, not into a painless future, not with every question answered, but she stepped. That choice contains a lesson ambitious people often resist. Success is not only about reaching the stage, it is also about recognizing when the stage no longer contains your whole life. To leave at the right time requires a different courage than to continue. Continuing asks for discipline. Leaving asks for trust. Trust that you will exist without applause. Trust that the people who truly know your value will not need constant proof. Trust that a life can change shape and still remain yours. Adele had that trust, or enough of it to move. Adele Astaire's power was not the power of command. It was not a crown, not an office, not a contract that forced others to obey. Her power was relational. It moved through energy, trust, chemistry, and choice. She knew how to pull attention without seeming desperate for it. She knew how to strengthen a partner without disappearing inside him. She knew how to become central without always standing alone. And then, when the role no longer fit, she knew how to leave. There is a quiet radicalism in that. Because the world often tells talented women to be grateful for visibility, grateful for partnership, grateful for being included in a story that might later forget them, Adele's life says something different. Visibility is not the same as ownership. For many women, history has preserved the names of the stars while overlooking those who helped make stardom possible. Adele's story reminds us to ask not only who received the applause, but who made it possible. Partnership is not the same as surrender, and being remembered imperfectly does not mean you mattered less. First, influence is not always visible. Adele reminds us that some of the most important power in any room is atmospheric. It is the person who creates courage, rhythm, humor, and possibility. The person who makes others better may not always be the one history crowns. But invisible does not mean insignificant. Often, it means foundational. Second, great partnerships multiply talent. Adele and Fred worked because they were not duplicates. She brought spark. He brought structure. She loosened the room. He refined the craft. Their greatness came from contrast, not sameness. The strongest partnerships do not erase differences. They organize them into something neither person could create alone. Third, success includes knowing when to move on. Adele left before the world was ready to let her go. That decision was not weakness, it was self-definition. She understood that a successful role can still become too small. The courage to move on is part of leadership, because leadership begins with telling the truth about your own life. Return to the theater. The curtain rises. The orchestra begins. Two figures step into the light. Fred is precise, elegant, already becoming the man the world will remember. And beside him is Adele, quick-eyed, radiant, untamable, turning the stage from a display into an invitation. For a moment, before Hollywood rewrites the order of fame, before memory narrows the story, before her name is pushed into the margins, she is not a footnote. She is the force, the laugh, the lift, the spark that makes the whole room believe something wonderful is about to happen. Adele Astaire did not need to become the most remembered person in the partnership to be one of its architects. Her story asks us to look more carefully at influence, not only at the person who stands alone at the end, but at the person who helped them stand there, not only at the visible genius, but at the invisible current that shaped it. And maybe that is the deepest lesson Adele leaves behind. Your power is not measured only by how long the spotlight stays on you. Sometimes your power is measured by what grows in the light you helped create. Because the highest form of leadership is not always being remembered first. Sometimes it is making someone else's greatness possible without losing your own.